Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today with you, and as we take another important step forward towards building a prosperous, sustainable future for our province. The need for economic diversification and development for Manitoba's rural and northern communities has been ignored far too long. As urban areas reap the rewards of technological innovation, many of our rural communities are being left behind. That changes today. Reliable access to broadband network is key to unlocking the tremendous economic potential of rural and northern Manitoba. And that is why I'm excited to announce that our government will soon issue a request for proposals for companies to use Manitoba's underused fiber optic network for broadband services in rural, remote, Indigenous, and northern communities throughout Manitoba. This will allow providers to offer or improve service to rural and remote Manitoba communities that are largely underserved by high-speed, competitive, and reliable telecommunications. It will support the implementation of technologies that will keep pace with our growing data needs. It will make life safer for rural Manitobans by improving cellular service across long stretches of transportation corridors and in communities that are currently without cellular service. Best of all, it will be done by making use of a resource that is already in place. This new service will end isolation and build hope. It will improve the health and quality of life for those living throughout rural and northern Manitoba. And it will create economic opportunities for individuals, businesses, and communities. It will ensure an even brighter future for our province and for its people. Thank you very much, and I will take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. A reminder to our reporters online, you will have one opening question and one follow-up question. Up first this morning from CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Oh, hi, Mr. Minister. Jeff from CTV Winnipeg. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to read the release.
Has left the conference.
What's the estimated cost for this?
The estimated cost, Jeff, there is no cost. This is existing infrastructure that has been in place for a number of years, underutilized dark fiber, and this is a Manitoba-owned infrastructure that we're looking forward to put to work in rural and northern communities.
And so can you explain the RFP that how companies would bid to do what exactly? Pardon my ignorance.
Yeah, so we've, as you know, Jeff, or may not know, we had an RFQ late last fall put out to ensure that we have participation, and it was well received. And now we're moving forward with an RFP process, and this process will be developed in concert with the RFQ recipients and stakeholders, of course, to ensure that we get it right. Look, we know that rural and northern communities have been underserved, and we're excited today with this announcement to move forward with connectivity throughout Manitoba.
From City News, Stephanie.
Hi, Minister. Stephanie Olsuk from City News. Said it yourself, this infrastructure has been in place for a number of years. Why has it taken until now to request an RFP to tap into it?
Well, certainly, Stephanie, thanks for the question. COVID has definitely shed a light on the fact that we know that as urban folks in Winnipeg, we know that we have got fairly good connectivity here, but we know that now more folks are learning from home. They're also working from home, and we understand and we always know that there was an issue with connectivity. So COVID has again given us the opportunity to say, look, we need to move forward with this. This dark fiber has been in place for a number of years, and we're excited about doing exactly that moving forward.
And how soon could this actually get underway? Could people in rural and northern communities expect this to actually come to them?
Well, we're going to be working with the proponents to move forward with the RFP process again, as I mentioned earlier, Stephanie, and we're anticipating, and I don't want to prejudge the outcome of the RFP, but we're anticipating this will take some months to do, but again, the RFP will go out this fall, and then, of course, once the successful bidder or bidders is in place, then we'll move forward in concert with them to ensure that we go forward with connectivity throughout rural and northern regions.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Good morning, Minister. It's Carol Sanders at the Free Press. I'm wondering, are you as Minister or the Cabinet preventing Hydro from dealing transparently with its unions? Is there a gag order on Hydro to prevent it from being upfront with unions about what their options are in terms of wage cost reductions?
Well, thanks for the question, Carol, and certainly this issue, as the Premier related to yesterday, and I've also mentioned in the past, this is an issue between the employer and the unions. Certainly, we're not concerned, but we're also supportive of the fact that we know that we want to move forward in a collaborative way, and that's exactly what Hydro and their unions are continuing to do. They're at the table, and we would expect that they'll come forward with a proposal that will work for everybody. COVID has obviously been a challenge for all Manitobans, and it's all hands on deck, and we certainly appreciate the work that's going on.
Well, there's no directive from Cabinet for Hydro not to divulge details of what's required of them in terms of wage cost reduction.
We're not the employer. Manitoba Hydro is the employer, Carol, and certainly we appreciate the process. And we know that continued dialogue and conversations are going on between the employer and the unions.
From Global, Marnie.
Good afternoon, Marnie from Global News. Can you provide a bit more information about, I know the unions were still trying to figure this out earlier in the week, but who these 600 to 700 Hydro workers are that are impacted by the layoffs? Are they people working on the ground? Are they in a min setting? Can you give more detail on that?
Well, Marnie, again, certainly this is an issue between Manitoba Hydro and their unions, and as the Premier had mentioned yesterday, there are a number of opportunities to pursue with a work share opportunity, for instance, and I know that continued conversations and dialogue are going on. Certainly, as the Premier also mentioned, there was no intent to have layoffs. I mean, the bottom line is that we want to work together. We're all in this together, and certainly I know Manitoba Hydro as the employer and the unions understand. So we're looking forward to their continued conversations and discussions going forward.
And it did say that, well, at the beginning of the week, we said that layoffs would start as soon as the end of this week. We're now at the end of the week. Can you give us an update on where that process is and how many people have been laid off as of the end of the week?
Well, again, Marnie, there's discussions ongoing between the employer and the unions, and certainly I don't want to prejudge an outcome. There's good discussions going on, and we're looking forward to working with them and understanding as they move forward and supporting them to do so. So certainly, again, the unions and Manitoba Hydro will continue their discussions.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Wharton. It's Drew Mason, the Brandon Sun here. In the press release, it says that this fiber optic network has been in place for years. Why hasn't this been done before? Like, why are you only just putting out this now?
Well, again, Hydro had built connectivity years ago for northern work camps and the like. So this is, and quite frankly, they built it. They overbuilt the system, which is now a benefit to Manitobans in rural and northern communities and Indigenous communities. So we recognize that. COVID has really shed a light on that, Drew. It's given us a window in, so to speak, on how important it is for connectivity and the lack of it in northern and rural communities. So we're excited about moving forward with this announcement today.
Thank you. And just follow-up. You were saying
Has left the conference.
that there would be no cost to this. So is the provincial government here just kind of opening up this fiber optic network for a private company to come in and use, or what exactly is going on?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Drew, that's correct. There is no cost. The infrastructure is in place, and certainly it's an underused infrastructure, and we're looking forward to working through developing the RFP process with the proponents that have been identified through the RFQ, and we're looking forward to moving forward, as timely as possible, but ensuring that, safety is number one, and again, and connectivity can be addressed through the RFP process. So it's an exciting day for rural and northern communities, and certainly we're looking forward to continuing this process.
From CJOB, Diana.
Diana from CJOB, Minister Wharton, will the winning bidder or bidders lease the network from Manitoba Hydro? Like, will they get free access to it? How's that going to work?
Well, again, I don't want to prejudge, Diana, the outcome of the RFP. I mean, that RFP is going to be developed over the next several weeks and months, and the RFP should be out, as I mentioned earlier, in the fall. So, certainly that's not up to our government to determine what the outcome is. That's going to be the process, and the consultations with stakeholders are going to determine that outcome. So I certainly don't want to prejudge that.
Okay, and then just as a follow-up, do you have an estimate of sort of the percentage of communities up north that could be brought up to speed? Like, obviously this is pretty extensive, but do you have a sort of ballpark?
I don't have a ballpark at this point, Diana, but obviously there's a wealth of dark fiber running throughout the province, in particular in rural and northern areas. So once the RFP process is being developed, again, that'll tie into exactly where the opportunities will be for connectivity for our folks in rural and northern Manitoba.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh. From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh. From CBC Radio Canada, Patrick.
Bonjour, Monsieur Wharton. Patrick Foucault, Radio-Canada. On an unrelated topic, I'm not sure if you're in the position to answer that question, but some business owners in Winnipeg are afraid they'll have to shut down because their rents are too high, even with the federal program. So will the provincial government create a program to help those business owners who fall in the gaps of the federal program?
Well, Patrick, I appreciate the question, and as a former business owner, small business owner, I can certainly appreciate the challenges that our businesses are going through this unprecedented pandemic. And certainly, I know there's, as you know, the provincial government has stepped up in many ways in concert with the federal announcements. And certainly, as we go through this, it's unprecedented. There's no handbook on COVID, but we're working closely with all stakeholders to ensure that we position ourselves to come out of this pandemic stronger, and certainly that includes good dialogue with all stakeholders throughout our province.
Thank you. That would be it for my question.
Thank you.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Hey, Minister. The Premier kind of struggled to explain a fiscal logic behind the hydro cut. You guys can't draw any more money out of it now. So, you're the Minister. What is the financial wisdom behind these cuts?
Well, again, I think the Premier was very clear, Bart, in the fact that this is an all-hands-on-deck approach, and certainly we know that all sectors are suffering through this unprecedented pandemic, and we certainly are there to work with all sectors to ensure that we, as I mentioned earlier to Patrick, that we come out of this stronger than ever. So certainly we're asking our public sector in particular Manitoba Hydro, again, to participate, and certainly we're excited about the opportunity for Hydro and their unions to continue discussions and dialogue so that we are stronger as Manitobans coming through this pandemic.
Okay, I got to ask you again because you didn't answer. Why does it make sense to cut hydro jobs and costs when you can't actually draw any more money out of hydro?
So, Bart, as I mentioned earlier, I appreciate the question, and certainly Hydro is the employer and the unions are working together. Bottom line is that we're excited about the fact that they're at the table and they're working in collaboration to ensure that we come out of this stronger as we go forward. And look, these have been challenging times for everybody, and we really appreciate our frontline workers more than ever, in particular our doctors and nurses, and again, our Hydro frontline workers as well, for keeping us all safe. That's the number one goal here, is Manitobans' safety, and we will continue down that road.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press. Minister Wharton, is this RFP, when you mention Manitoba Hydro's thousands of kilometers of fiber optic cable, are you looking for private companies to buy out the backbone, the network?
So what we're doing in the RFQ is clear, is we'll be providing the dark fiber that exists to go through an RFP process to provide with the 5 or 6 companies that may come forward in telcos. They'll have the opportunity to essentially latch onto the dark fiber. This is a Manitoba-owned asset, will continue to be a Manitoba-owned asset, and we're looking forward to the results of the RFP so that we can get folks connected. I mean, COVID has shown us that, Steve, and we've talked about it before. There's a lack of connectivity in rural and northern areas, and we're really excited to move forward today with this process in collaboration with all stakeholders.
And just to be clear, when you say it will continue to be Manitoba-owned, will it continue to be publicly owned?
Absolutely.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good morning. Good morning, Minister. This is Josh Aldridge with the Winnipeg Sun. More into the coverage within Manitoba. Are there still going to be dark spots out there? Is this going to equally hit all rural areas and First Nations and all that, or is that still to be further developed beyond the infrastructure that's currently in place?
So, Josh, good question. And again, that's going to be flushed out during the RFP process. That process will determine where the majority of those areas are. This is going to help enhance existing service in cellular and broadband. So this is going to bring broadband and cellular to communities that haven't had and enhance. So once we get through the RFP process, we'll have a better handle on where exactly some of those spots will end up.
And my second question. We've heard a lot from Manitoba Hydro, obviously we've heard from the university. Have you received and have you gone through all the Crown Corporation proposals for cuts, or are we still expecting more coming the next week where we could be looking at more layoffs and staff reductions going forward?
So again, as I mentioned before, our Crown corporations, in particular Hydro, is the employer, and the employees are the unions. And we're obviously again excited at the fact that things are moving along, and there's good dialogue, good discussion between the employer and employee. Look, that needs to continue. As I mentioned, it's all hands on deck, and we know that we'll come out of this pandemic stronger than we were going in. So, the goal again was never to really look at any layoffs. We're looking at work share programs with the government, and as the Premier alluded to yesterday. That's the goal, to ensure we're all in this together, and we'll come out stronger in the end.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, everyone online. This concludes this morning's media briefing.